The state's ban on openly carrying a gun is ruled unconstitutional, but the future of firearms laws in Florida is unclear when it comes to what's allowed and what isn't. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Coming up, in a time of division and tension, Stetson University students find a way to unite, cross party lines, and condemn political violence together. And a story of sisterhood and survival that's bringing the voices of Black women to the stage in Sanford. But first, a Florida appeals court ruling says the state's ban on openly carrying a gun is unconstitutional. That happened last week. Then on Monday, Attorney General James Uthmeier said this.
I think the opinion was accurate. Open carry is now the law of the state.
Uthmeier sent out a guidance memo to prosecutors and law enforcement and wrote his office would no longer prosecute open carry charges. Technically, the ban on open carry is still the law on the books in Florida. That means, outside of a few exceptions like hunting or fishing, you are not allowed to visibly carry a firearm in public that isn't hidden from sight. Now, concealed carry is legal in every state, and Florida has a law allowing permitless or constitutional carry, meaning you don't need to apply for a concealed weapons license or do related training or background checks. The new court ruling we're talking about today refers to the ban on open carry. Orlando criminal defense attorney James Phillips explains the impact of the court's decision and the Attorney General's authority to instruct Florida's law enforcement agencies to ignore the open carry ban.
He is allowed to say that as your chief law enforcement officer of the state, we're not going to enforce this and it should not be prosecuted. Yes. Can he make up laws saying, well, you can't carry openly in this area, that? No, because only the legislature can make laws. Courts determine whether those laws are constitutional or not constitutional, legal or not legal, or lawful. So this attorney general is not going to be able to say, well, based on that, the law is you can't carry in X, Y, Z. Now, what I do expect that's going to happen is there's going to be legislative bills coming out outlining the parameters of open carry, where you can and cannot carry. And I expect it's going to mirror what they already did in Florida Statute 790.06, where we have a list of prohibited locations that a person cannot carry under a concealed carry license.
I better understand why these different sheriffs have been coming out and making statements about how they will or will not interpret this ruling.
Right. Well, before yesterday, some of the sheriffs were saying, hey, this is binding on the whole state. This is what I'm going to do. And I haven't kept up with every single one of them because a lot of them have come out, great opportunity for media, I guess. But the attorney general, the head guy yesterday, came out and said that this is going to be binding on all the states. He sent out a guidance memorandum to all of the law enforcement agencies and prosecuting authorities saying that it's binding and it's, in essence, unconstitutional. In his guidance memorandum, he even references the fact that the court decision neither considered nor impacted Florida's law listing certain locations where the carrying of a firearm, open or concealed, may be unauthorized. So, he even kind of brought that up, that this court decision didn't say, hey, the law is unconstitutional, you may now open carry in these places, but not in these places. It just said the law is unconstitutional. That's it. So it's left a lot of issues. Again, if we look at where you are not allowed to carry under a concealed carry license, which has been the only way a person could carry in Florida up until this court ruling, it has certain places like any places of nuisance, of a police sheriff's station, courthouse. We just don't have those specifically designed for open carry. And if we actually look at the language of the prohibited areas in the law that we have now under concealed carry, it's 790.06 subsection 12A. It says a license under this section does not authorize any person to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed handgun or a concealed firearm. Now, it does mention open carry in there, which is where I think a lot of the sheriffs are coming from. But one thing that's unique is it says a license issued under this section does not authorize. Well, we don't have a license issued for open carry. What we have is a law saying that the open carry ban is unconstitutional. Now, I think a lot of sheriffs are going to interpret this, and they may be right in the courts. We're going to have to wait and see what the courts end up saying. But it says, 12A, a license issued under this section does not authorize any person to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or a concealed firearm. So I think the sheriffs are really hanging their hat on this portion where it says openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon. But the issue is the beginning of that section specifically says a license issued under this section.
And there's so much just nuance in this. Does this place any type of undue burden on the gun owner to know what that person can or can't do?
Yes, it does. And what I tell people is come September the 26th, the ruling is final. The rehearing time has elapsed. I'm telling people to wait till that time to open carry. In the abundance of caution, I believe it's best that after that time period, people still do not carry in the prohibited locations. I don't know if I'm right about that. I don't know if I'm wrong because there's no court precedent out there telling me one way or the other. I just have a feeling, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, I anticipate law enforcement having a problem with someone open carrying a firearm in these prohibited locations that are laid out in Florida Statute 790.06 subsection 12A. And again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, that section specifically says a license issued, but they're still going to hang their hat on this. And I think to play it safe and to err on the side of caution, I personally would not open carry in these prohibited locations at this time. Anywhere else, good to go.
I'd like to ask your guidance just from a couple different perspectives. Does this have any potential to change what a business owner can do? Can a business owner refuse to serve a customer openly carrying without a printed visible notice, please?
Yeah, and even the Attorney General in his guidance letter, and I'll just read from it. The court's decision neither considered nor implicated Florida's law listing certain locations where the carry of firearms, open or concealed carry, may be unauthorized. The same holds true for private property owners who maintain the long-standing legal prerogative to compel individuals carrying firearms to leave their premises. So right now, even if you carry concealed, a business owner that doesn't want you on his property can ask you to leave, and if you do not leave, you can be charged with the trespass. The same will be true for open carry. They can prohibit you from being on their premises. Their property rights allow them to do that.
How could this change the day-to-day life of the typical Florida gun owner who is interested in open carrying a gun?
I think for the time being, if they maintain and abide by the prohibited locations, at this point, till we get further clarification, I think they should be able to carry just like they've carried a concealed firearm for the last however many years they've been doing it. So it really shouldn't change where they go, what they can do, as long as they abide by the prohibited locations right now for the concealed carry license. The only thing that changes is instead of having it tucked under their shirt, they can have it on their waistband, visible. And one thing to know is the concealed carry license was specific to handguns. Well, the open carry ban was applicable to firearms, period, and the court found that the ban on open carry is unconstitutional. So I think that clearly opens the door for people who want to carry rifles. You can openly carry a rifle.
You're an attorney, you're a former prosecutor. Do you have any concerns about the potential unintended consequences of this policy reversal?
I don't really have any concerns. I think the courts have been very clear. I mean, Florida has been one of the minority states that has banned open carry. I mean, at the time the ruling came out, I think there was only 3 others, California, Connecticut. I don't think we're going to have this huge negative impact that some of the media and gun control groups are saying. Hasn't really affected other states. I don't see it's going to affect us any differently here. I think as long as the people are reasonable in how they carry, again, I am erring on the side of caution, and I don't think people should necessarily carry in these prohibited locations that they can't conceal carry at this time. I think doing so is going to cause some issues with law enforcement if people decide to do that, because I'm pretty confident from what I've seen that law enforcement are taking these prohibited locations for concealed carry and they're applying it to open carry. I also think if people start carrying in these prohibited places, that it could potentially cause legislative bills to come out that are not in our favor, that we don't want.
What's the takeaway from our conversation when people hear about an appeals court finding Florida's open carry ban unconstitutional?
I agree with the Attorney General. I think he's come to the right resolution. I believe the courts got it right based on the Bruin decision out of the United States Supreme Court. Open carry ban is unconstitutional. My takeaway is I think we're going to be fine doing open carry. I just advise people to, be reasonable. We have to keep in mind the Second Amendment. It's very clear. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And this open carry ban that we've had since 1987 was an infringement of our right to bear arms. So it's a victory.
Criminal defense attorney James Phillips is a founding partner of Katz & Phillips in Orlando and an NRA-certified firearms instructor. Phillips isn't the only Floridian enthusiastic about this ruling. Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey released this message on the Sheriff's Office Facebook page.
Folks, this is a huge win for the state of Florida and the citizens. As we've all seen in the past few days and even hours, how vital our God-given right to self-defense truly is. This incredible ruling by the court not only upholds the Constitution, but also gives every Florida citizen the ability to protect themselves and those around them.
But not everyone is on the same page, and it may depend on where you are in Florida, whether you see someone openly carrying a gun. After the court ruling, several Central Florida sheriffs issued guidance to their residents in videos posted online. Let's listen to some of their comments. The first voice you'll hear is Orange County Sheriff John Mina.
Although firearms can now be carried openly in Florida, you cannot carry openly or concealed in most government buildings, on college campuses, or passenger terminals at airports. It's very important that you understand the law. And it's important to understand that private property owners can still prohibit anyone from carrying firearms onto their properties and trespass anyone who violates that rule. That includes any private residence or business or places like shopping malls, hotels, and theme parks.
Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods says he's committed to observing the rights of gun owners and the safety of Marion County residents.
Private businesses or property owners may still prohibit firearms on their property, and we ask that you respect that. Or you may be legally trespassed from the property. Here's what I ask of you. Respect their freedom and right to do so. Because here's what I can promise you. Just as much as I will protect and defend your right to bear arms, I will also defend their right as well.
We asked Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood to talk to us about how the changes are impacting his agency and what questions his deputies are asking regarding the department's interpretation of the policy.
What constitutes open carry? What type of weapons constitutes open carry? Where can you open carry? What's prohibited under open carry is really the big thing. Because like right now, we have an ass that is riding around on a hoverboard with an AR-15 on their back. And they're riding through parking lots and they're riding down the streets. They're staying in public venue, but they're also trying to provoke an encounter with law enforcement looking for a lawsuit. So that's the issue that we're going to see here till the legislature comes back into session. And then the legislature defines the who, what, where, when, and how this is going to work.
What do you even tell your deputies?
Right now, what we're telling our deputies is you cannot enforce 7090.053, which says open carry is illegal in the state of Florida. You can't enforce that. If you have concern, by all means, take a photograph, do what's called an FIC field interview card, do a really good report, and send it up into our legal office, and we'll confer with the state attorney's office and see if it's an incident where we will get a warrant for that.
You mentioned that you were getting questions from the community as well. What are you hearing from them?
The length of the barrel of the gun. Could I bring my gun into a county council or a city council chambers? Am I allowed to bring my gun into the state house? Can I carry my gun in Publix? That's what we're finding out. What am I not allowed to carry? And some of those questions I can't answer because we don't know what you're not allowed to carry. That we won't know that till the legislature makes that determination. Are they going to say it's handguns and pistols only and put out certain specifications to that? Are they going to allow you to strap your bazooka to your back and walk up and down the beach with that? They're all questions that are still out there. Some of the preclusions are still there. You know, you can't bring the courthouses, for example. The chief judge can say no firearms into the courthouse, and that's would be the law. Publics could turn around and say we are not allowing anyone to open carry in our stores. That would be, you know, you can get arrested for going into a private property and carrying a firearm there.
I know that there's a lot to still be determined and wait to see what happens with lawmakers. You did mention the beach, though. I'm thinking about events like spring break. We have so many people that come in, thousands upon thousands. Do you have any concerns about open carry?
Yeah, absolutely. We are concerned. You save all year to go on vacation, and you come down here, and you put your kids on the beach, and somebody throws their blanket out next to you and props up their two AR-15s, or your kids are going into the water, or they're building a sandcastle, and the person sitting next to you has a gun slung over their shoulder. You think that's not going to hurt tourism? You think we're going to have people want to come here and see that when they're on the beach? I don't think so. You know, how about going to a ballpark? How about going to a stadium? That's what I'm saying. There are so many questions out there. From my understanding, obviously it's easy right now. Correctional facilities and courthouses can't carry. There's some issues about polling places. Fortunately, we don't have any elections coming up, and we'll see how that works out. And the only place you can open carry that may not be prohibited is where government property is open to the public and unrestricted. That's another thing that, you have to look at. How is that going to work? And of course, the same thing applies. No matter who you are, you cannot carry your firearm in an angry, threatening, or a careless manner when it's not being used for self-defense. This law does not apply to convicted felons. Doesn't apply to folks who have been adjudicated mentally ill. If you have a risk protection order against you or injunctions for protection, the order specifically states that you're not allowed to be in possession of a firearm. One thing is clear, that if a deputy makes a mistake, they are not guaranteed qualified immunity, meaning they are personally, civilly liable. So you talk about making a law enforcement officer hesitate, that I think I'm making an arrest in good faith, and the courts say good faith doesn't matter here. You are on the hook for civil damages. Me as the sheriff, if my deputy makes an error in judgment or a mistake in understanding the law, I am personally civilly liable because I cannot be covered by the government under qualified immunity if this happens. So basically, the inmates are running the asylum here. You can run around and do what you want until the legislature clarifies this and codifies it, and law enforcement is really powerless to take any steps whatsoever.
What would you say to the people who see this as a win? It's their right to carry a gun, and this is a win for Second Amendment supporters.
That is their argument, and I think it's a valid argument. I think what happens normally with this, and from what I've seen and understand in other states talking to other sheriffs, 99% of the gun owners are overwhelmingly responsible folks. They're good citizens. They work every day. They vote. They participate in community activities. They're not the issue. The issue is that 1% that, like I talked about, the guy on the hoverboard, the person who wants to come to the beach with multiple weapons on them. That's what the concern becomes, because the responsible folks are going to do the responsible things. Like, we very rarely, if ever, have any incidents with a person who has a concealed weapons permit. I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of any of them. Permitless carry, we had some issues there. Probably had 14 people accidentally shoot themselves in the first 6 months when that law went into effect. And now you're going to add open carry into the mix.
What do you say to people who are learning about this ruling and they are concerned about gun violence?
You should be concerned. This comes on the heels of what we just happened here, an off-duty police officer in a Circle K in Ormond by the Sea buying soft drinks. basically got assassinated by a permitless weapons carrier. We don't know why he did it. He claims multitude of things, but he purchased that firearm legally on September 5th. We woke up on the morning of the homicide, which was Monday, decided today was the day he was going to kill Officer Jewell for some perceived argument that we can't prove ever happened. Before he reports into work, he goes to the gun shop, picks up his gun, and 2 hours and 4 minutes later pumps 24 bullets into the back of the head of off-duty officer David Jewell. So I don't think it makes us safer, because I think we are already one of the, if not the safest state in America is the state of Florida. Texas has open carry. I'm not knocking them. I don't see it making them any safer. And again, we're going to have to see how all of this plays out. You know, we can think anything we want. The proof will be in the pudding. What I learned about permitless carry from all of our informational digging deep into it and talking to other states, it was exactly what they said it was going to be. You know, the one thing you're going to see with it is a number of accidental shootings where people accidentally have shooting themselves or accidentally shooting somebody else had occurred. And I would assume the same thing's going to happen with the irresponsible people who want to open carry. And nobody has the irresponsible tattooed on their forehead. You know, there's no stamp that we stamp on your forehead, irresponsible, so everybody can see you and know we need to stay away from you.
That was Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood. We asked to hear from you. Allison wrote us, quote, "I don't want to live in the wild, wild west. I don't want to be at Publix surrounded by guns. I may be now, but I can't see them. I want to keep it that way," end quote. There's more ahead on Engage. Two Stetson University student leaders, one Republican and one Democrat, unite to send one clear message: political violence isn't partisan. The roadmap they're creating in civil discourse and finding common ground is next on Engage on Central Florida Public Media.
There's a lot going on in space, from efforts to land astronauts on the moon
and liftoff of Artemis 1
to answering the age-old question, are we alone in the universe?
Wouldn't you want to know if there was life on another planet?
Are we there yet? Explores space exploration every Tuesday at 6:30 here on Central Florida Public Media.
This is Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. It's no secret we are living in politically polarized times. While polarization is a sentiment that people have expressed at many points throughout history and current day, we also can't ignore that things, at the very least, feel heightened right now. In the wake of the Charlie Kirk killing, the Democrat and Republican student groups at Stetson University in DeLand have not only come together to issue a joint statement against political violence, but to also sit down together for a conversation. Mackenzie Cunningham is president of the College Republicans. Asher Sakachevsky is president of Stetson College Democrats. Let's listen to the statement they released, along with the nonpartisan Stetson Votes organization, in their words.
We as organizations have our differences in policy, platform, etc.
However, at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We are all Americans.
The shooting of Charlie Kirk at his rally in Utah Valley University is a disgusting example of political violence that is becoming too common in this country.
We pray for Charlie's family, and we will not stand for any acts of violence in this country.
We're going to talk to them about how they found common ground. First, let's take it back to the beginning, to what drew Mackenzie Cunningham and Asher Sakachevsky to politics in the first place.
So it started with my mom, actually. When I was just a little kid, she actually did canvassing for Obama. She had one hand on the stroller, another hand with literature for Obama. And then as I got older, when I was in 9th grade in my high school, I realized that we didn't have an environmental club at my school. So I started an environmental club at my school, and I quickly realized that if I want to see environmental change, I would need to see people in office that care about tackling environmental issues. So that's really what got me involved.
And Mackenzie, what made you even want to get into politics?
I didn't start having an interest in politics until I was in about sixth or seventh grade, and that was when President Trump ran for his first term in the office. My dad has always been a very political figure in my life. He encourages like voting on whatever subject that might be, whatever party that might be. And so when I started taking interest in the media that was surrounding that electoral process, me and him started going to rallies together, and he kind of just really sparked that love of politics in me. And so together now, we are now voting together. We go to the polling locations together. We make it like a father-daughter day, and it's something that we hold very close to our heart.
Stetson GOP and Democrats are part of a joint statement that begins, quote, "We as organizations have our differences in policy, platform, etc. However, at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We are all Americans. The shooting of Charlie Kirk at his rally in Utah Valley University is a disgusting example of political violence that is becoming too common in this country," end quote. Tell me the origin of that statement. What went into it? Why was it important for you both to do it together?
From the summer till now, me and Asher have had a group chat going with our friend Carly from Stetson Votes. And when the shooting first took place, that's the group chat is how we found out about it. And from there, we just kind of launched into action. We decided as a unit that we wanted to come together as one and make one joint statement at Stetson to just show that we were not standing apart and that we were standing together.
And if I could just add to that, I know we all have different perspectives, but to be able to come together and say, look, political violence has no place in our country is extremely important, because unfortunately, I do think it's on the rise in this country. And it's very, very scary.
I noticed in the statement, you did not blame partisan politics in the statement. You didn't blame the left. You didn't blame the right. Was that intentional?
Yes. Me and Asher are firm believers that pointing the finger at one side or the other is never going to be a solution to any sort of disagreement. Disagreement is not grounds for violence. Disagreement is not grounds for murder. And we feel very strongly that political violence is not a partisan issue. It has no labels and it attacks anybody. So we wanted to make sure that we were not pointing fingers at an already disheveled part of our world.
For people who are listening to our interview and aren't seeing us, I just want to point out that Asher and Mackenzie are sitting next to each other for this conversation. I want to know, how can more people do what you all did and shift toward that shared humanity that you talked about in your statement?
I think it starts with listening to each other and sitting down and being respectful. I know these issues are oftentimes very sensitive, but just hearing each other out and learning about each other's positions. We have a program here at Stetson called Things We Don't Talk About at Dinner, where students come together and talk about sensitive topics. I was there last week when we talked about the role of gender in society, a very sensitive topic, and students from all across the aisle were able to come together and talk about that.
I also feel like embodying what Charlie Kirk did. He sat on college campuses across the United States and hosted open dialogue, whether or not he disagreed or agreed with that person. Debate is necessary for disagreement because it allows both sides of the party to educate and inform the other on issues that they care about. And in fact, Asher and I are taking an approach like that, which was already a planned event from this summer, but we are hosting a debate against each other. And as presidents of both parties, that we will be in Stetson, we will have a pre-planned debate, and we'll be talking about hot topics in political society today. And we're doing that respectfully because we both value what the other one has to say.
You two have come together. Some party leaders at the highest level in this country, we're not really seeing a softening of rhetoric. Does that concern either of you?
It's very concerning to me that both President Trump and Vice President Vance have consistently attacked the left. I'm scared this is going to cause more chaos and more violence in this country. We should not be blaming either side for political violence. That has no place. There's no place in our country to be blaming either side. We should, and it's just unacceptable. And I wish that more people high up in parties would take note of our joint statement and be respectful to both sides, because it's no side's fault for what happened.
I absolutely agree with Asher. And I think that we've come to a point in our country where political polarization is just so present. And I think that while we are seeing that in the current people in office and the current representatives across the country, and we're seeing this hatred for both sides, I think that it's important to note that we are part of the next generation of future leaders, and that our generation has the potential to rise up and make that change. And while we can preach it all day long, until we put that into practice, we are not going to see that result at the higher level, because it needs to start with us.
Mackenzie, you're with Stetson Republicans. Asher, you're
Yes,
with Stetson Democrats.
Yeah.
If someone was listening to us talk, you're making it sound very easy. Why is this so hard?
I think people get so caught up in the left and the right that they forget the people behind the issues. Like, for instance, when I look at Asher, I don't look at Asher and think, oh, he's a Democrat. I look at Asher and I see the friend that I've come to know and value. And I think if people took an approach like that, an approach like we take, and we find the things that we value in each other outside of politics, it would make having these conversations so much easier. If we came to recognize the people behind the statements rather than just the statements themselves, that we would have a lot more hope with each other, because there would be a lot more tolerance for other ideas.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think we could come together, listen to what we have to say, and come to understand each other, even if we might not agree.
And I know we've mentioned disagreeing a lot, but Asher and I are very, very similar in a lot of aspects. And that's something that we wouldn't know if we didn't sit down and talk about these issues. And people should really sit down and talk more and find that common ground.
If you could sit down with political leaders or figures right now and have the type of conversation we're having, what would you say to them?
I would tell them to look at the person who did this and not blame either side. I would also tell them that I think it's time for some gun reform in this country. There's been so much violence in this country, political violence, school shootings. This is a dangerous time to live in, and we need some sensible gun reform in this country.
I think I would sit down and remind them that at the end of the day, we're all people. I think we get so caught up in the politics of the world, and especially being in a position, an elected position. I think that the people in those places of power, they get so hung up on, these people elected me to do this thing. They get hung up on the issues that they're passionate about, and they forget that at the end of the day, the things that they're saying and the things that they are fighting for are connected to other people as well. So when you're slamming another party or another individual, it is not that you're criticizing their policies at that point, you're criticizing that person. And God created us all as very different people, and we are made in his perfect image. And if we forget that and we start attacking people at the root of who they are, then we have come a very long way from politics, which I feel like is how we shifted in this country today. Because at the end of the day, we are people, we all have a beating heart, and we need to focus on that. And I think that that would help a lot of the problems that we're seeing in our country, and it might help close that divide.
Going into this conversation with you both, I was prepared to kind of wind things down, calm things down, and ask you both, what do you respect about each other outside of politics? But I don't even feel the need to go there, because it's very clear to me that you two are friends, despite your vastly different political views.
Yeah. And I'm going to answer your question regardless, because I just feel like it's so important to talk about why we are good friends. And I feel like one thing I very much respect about Asher is that regardless of the subject, Asher is going to be the loudest person in the room if that subject is passionate about him. And I mean that in a good way, because whether that's environmental issues or politics or even just things that are happening on Stetson's campus, he is passionate about advocating for what he believes in. And that's something that I've always admired about him.
And something I really admire about Mackenzie is just how involved she is on campus. She's involved in so many clubs. She's in Greek life. She works in the community. And it's just really inspiring to see how she could be so involved on campus, so involved in the community, and still be so successful in school.
Asher Sakochevsky is president of Stetson College Democrats. Mackenzie Cunningham is president of the College Republicans. That may be the end of this conversation, but the story doesn't stop here. We want to hear from you about how you've found ways to overcome political differences and find common ground. Send an email to engage@cfpublic.org or record and send us a talkback message on the Central Florida Public Media app. Coming up, a groundbreaking production that shattered Broadway norms is coming to Central Florida. We take you behind the scenes of the choreo poem, bringing the raw, emotional experiences of Black women to the stage in Sanford. You are listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media.
The Wrap is a podcast from Central Florida Public Media, curating the top Central Florida news stories and in-depth reporting each week. Join me, Brendan Byrne, as I bring you news headlines, deep reporting dives, and insightful conversations from the news team. A new episode of The Wrap every Friday morning. Get it wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. A unique performance at Theater West End is running through Sunday. Engage producer Richard Copeland stopped by the Playhouse in Sanford to learn more about a 50-year-old play that still holds resonance today.
In 1976, playwright Ntozake Shange published a play so revolutionary in construct it spawned its own genre, the choreo poem. The performance was an amalgam of movement and poetry, both delivering powerful messages reflective of the issues faced by Black women 50 years ago. Those issues are still present in the lives of Black women today, as presented in For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. Shange's choreo poem is being performed at the Theater West End in Sanford through Sunday. The play addresses a wide spectrum of topics: addiction, poverty, sexual and physical abuse, and racism. But there is a through line that identifies efforts to find strength and joy through unity. These stories are told through dance and poetry in a series of vignettes by 7 nameless women identified by colors: red, yellow, orange, brown, green, blue, and purple.
But I get tired, and I have to come off of the floor. And then there's that woman who hurt you, who you left 3 or 4 times and just walked back. After you put my heart in the bottom of your shoe, you just walked back to where you hurt, and I didn't have nothing. So I went to where somebody had something for me, but he wasn't you. And I was in the bottom of your shoe on the way back from her house, so this is not a love poem, because there are only memorial albums available. And even Charlie Mingus wanted desperately to be a pimp. And I won't be able to see Eddie Palmieri for months. So this is a requiem for myself, because I have died in a real way. Not with aqua coffins and doo-wop Cadillacs I used to joke about when I was messing around, but a real dead loving is here for you now, because I don't know anymore how to avoid my face wet with my tears, because I had convinced myself colored girls have no right to sorrow. And I lived and loved just that way and kept sorrow on the curb, allegedly for you.
I met with 3 of the performers: Bethany Hemmons, Desiree Montez, and Roberta Emerson, who also serves as the production's director. We met at the Theater West End to learn more about what drew them to this play and why it feels as resonant in 2025 as it did when it was written 50 years ago. I began the conversation by asking Montez to explain the meaning of the title of Ntozake Shange's piece.
For colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. I think that's pretty on the head, but it's just a telling of so many stories, so many life and lived experiences, shared experiences amongst women of color, particularly women who are Black and brown, and exactly what it sounds like, things that maybe made us or pushed them, the people in this piece that Ntozake wrote about, to the point of considering ending their life here as we know it, and then explaining to the audience within the story the reasons why they eventually chose not to succumb to that, and chose to find the joy, and chose to find the pride, and chose to find resilience and and healing, and all of these things that often women of color, particularly Black women, carry throughout their lives, and get to the other side of that instead of succumbing to the darkness that is suicide.
And I want to get to some of those reasons, because, I mean, they cover, a broad spectrum of social issues. But before the characters themselves, they're to an extent stripped of an identity and identified by colors. Why is that? What does that stripping of a name of an individual identity represent?
I want to change the vocab a little bit, because I don't know that she strips them of an identity, but she gives them what I keep calling an every man, every woman status. So by making them colors, right? It allows us, even as the actors who step into the color or the role, to live the piece, right? So suddenly, my lady in red, Dez's lady in purple, Bethany's lady in yellow is their lady, right? But it signifies this universal specificity.
And I think adding to that, every woman is individually called a color, and then at the end of the title, when the rainbow is enough, I think that it also signifies that when we come together, we are the community that keeps us from ending up taking our own lives, because the community is also what brings us back to that resilience, brings us back to the healing, and brings us back to the joy. So I think that also probably had something to do with it.
Just to go off of what Roberta was saying, it gives the performer the autonomy to be able to bring themselves to this role versus just stepping into, it makes it very different from other performances or other productions where you are stepping into a role and you're living within that role. We are given the autonomy and given the permission by the playwright to step into these roles per se, but to bring our full selves to them. So people are seeing how we are connecting and seeing us tell the story through our experiences.
And is part of that taking a story that was written in 1976 by Sean Gay and bringing it to 2025?
I think the beautiful part about this story is it's still relevant. So it's not a whole lot of, I have to bring this and make it relevant. No, these are things that still exist within the communities that we occupy, and it still is, it still reverberates through the fabric of life.
Fortunately and unfortunately, in a lot of situations, things that we have experienced, right? This cast has varying experiences of the stories in this show. Most Black women have varying experiences of the stories that are reflected in the show, both fortunately and unfortunately, because we've had to overcome a lot of these things just in society, and that's 1976, that's 2025, right? And so when Des says we are living it, there are all through the show, there are moments where you're seeing us, right? We may be using her words, but for many of us in this show, you're hearing our own stories in a lot of ways.
And these are heavy stories. We're talking about abortion. We're talking about sexuality and rape. The one that stuck out was towards the end, one of the last movements. It's the story of Bo Willie.
Yes.
And I mean, this is an incredibly tragic tale that talks about mental illness, PT. He's a veteran. His drug issues, he's abusive towards his wife. Was it difficult to wrap your hands around the breadth of the issues about how much, I mean, I wouldn't call it traumatic so much as going back to the word heavy. This is a lot going into one production.
And I would call it traumatic. There's a lot of trauma in the piece. I think, is it difficult? Yes. The way we as Black women are often forced to live our lives is difficult. And I think it's easy to fall into the difficultness of it because the show is heavy. And what I'm happy about is that we came in knowing that it is trauma, and we are talking about trauma that we have experienced. She's talking about what is being put in this play, and choosing again and again, as we do as Black women, to go at it from a place of, and we still heal, right? And I think that's the part that I want to keep saying, because you can look at this story and go, oh my God, it's heavy. Oh my God, it's trauma. Oh my God, But they move to the end of that rainbow. We move to the end of that rainbow. Black women constantly move to the end of that rainbow. And we shouldn't always have to, but we do. And I think there's something really necessary to hear about how we as a demographic continuously find ways to find joy within our own trauma. So you get to, as the audience, you get to come and hear our stories, but you also get to see our resilience and our joy, and hopefully then remember to treat us better, right? To allow us our softness, to allow us moments where we just get to love and get to be soft and joyful, and even in the midst of that trauma. And so maybe we get less trauma.
What do you hope audiences leave with?
I hope audiences leave with both a reckoning for the insight of the world that Black women see every day, as well as a appreciation for the joy that we not only bring to ourselves, but we bring to them and to the world and to people around us.
Agreed. I couldn't have said it better. Mine was appreciation for what we bring. That, exactly that.
Yeah. Oof. I don't think I can say anything much better than that either. One, I want people to not be turned off by the title.
Right.
I want people to get into the habit of embracing new works, especially people who claim to be avid theater goers and big supporters of the arts. I would like them to broaden their spectrum of what that support looks like and support all different types of work. I want people in the audience to remember that theater is a conversation and a dialogue, and just be open to coming in to learning and listening to different perspectives. I think so many people are turned off by even walking into the space and giving works like this a chance. And you know, our art imitates life, right? We hear that all the time, and it is for a reason. And we are out here trying to imitate the life. We are out here trying to tell the stories. And the only way we can tell these stories and have somebody receive them is if they are willing to come and be here.
I hope it opens eyes, makes people think.
Bethany Hemmons, Desiree Montez, and director Roberta Emerson will be performing in For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough at Theater West End in Sanford through Sunday. We will have links to the theater on our website, cfpublic.org.
That's all for today's edition of Engage. I'm Sharon Stone. Thank you for joining us.